From the 915 to H-Town, from the Panhandle Plains to the Valley, and everywhere in between. This is the 50/50 Podcast, powered by College Promoters USA. Join me, Hector Cano, as we cover the Texas high school club and college soccer landscape, along with an inside look at the college soccer recruiting scene. The 50/50 Podcast is a platform about the people and for the people who are dedicated to the beautiful game. Here we go. It's another edition of the 50/50 Podcast, powered by our proud partners, College Promoters USA. They are America's premier college prep program and high school student athlete marketing service since 1997. Located locally here in San Antonio, you can find them in the Ventura Plaza Shopping Center. But you can also find them on social media, on Twitter at SATX Recruiting, as well as on Instagram at College Promoters USA. You can also get more information on the many cool things they're doing and what they're about on their website at collegepromotersusa.com. My next guest, very proud, very happy to have him here. Another fellow veteran who's doing some phenomenal things in the college game. I've been a big fan of his work. Been able to connect with him for about a year or so now. So we're excited to have him on, blessed to have him on. He is Coach Ahmad Brown, the assistant women's soccer coach and performance analyst at Texas A&M University. Coach, welcome.
Hector, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here. It's always great to not only listen in on your podcast, but now be a guest and be on here. So this is a great opportunity. Thank you.
Awesome. I'll tell you the way I told Coach Salas over now at Abilene Christian, right? I said, so you're the one, huh? You're the one that's listening. I've been trying to track down who's the one that's listening. So awesome. Yeah. I appreciate that. Coach, so, Happy New Year as well. You're our second episode of the new year. We're excited to have you here. We're going to talk a lot of things from obviously your time. You have a very unique story. And one of the things that I really want to hit on is we have a lot of things in common as well. So I'm very excited and I'm very proud to see some of the things that you're doing within the game. But before we get into that, just very briefly, just kind of tell us a couple of the places that you've been and how you arrived at Texas A&M.
Yeah, so, started off, originally from Florida, grew up in Melbourne, have a lot of great close friends that were there. It's a very rich soccer community in the entire state. Then went up, did my formal education, was playing up in Wisconsin, started my coaching at the high school there at St. Thomas More, was doing volunteer and assistant work with Marquette, and then made my way to the University of Florida, and then Florida State, and now with Texas A&M. And along that road, I had, club here and there. So I don't want to be dismissive to that either.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like, don't make it sound like, you've been on a pretty awesome journey. But so in the middle of all of that, we talked about, or I alluded to it briefly, but you also spent some time in the Army as a fellow veteran, as a combat veteran as well. So in that role, so again, I always got to share that with a fellow veteran. Thank you. It can sound, whether it sounds corny, cliche, whatever, but we do appreciate your service. Thank you for your service. But making the transition as a veteran into, quote unquote civilian life and coaching at that, what was that like? Take us through that transition.
Oh, that's a good question. With the transition, because the jobs are not particularly the same, right? I think the commonalities that you have amongst them are going to be things such as leadership role, management at different levels, teamwork, individuality, etc. But for me, it was a little bit more difficult, only in the sense that a lot of the pathway and navigation to transition from military to the civilian sector was already difficult as it is. And then when you throw in the anomaly of coaching in itself and how there isn't really a linear pathway either, it further, I guess you could say, for better lack of words, exacerbates the situation in terms of trying to
Right.
find how you can get there. What's the type of do credits transfer between the branch into university if you want to do your studies? How does that translate into your private sector for work with civilians? And then most importantly is trying to find out what skill sets you have in the military that can be found on a different resume. For instance, we're not going to put on there close quarter battle breaching, right? Because it's not quite the same.
It's not
However,
relevant. I guess that's not considered relevant, huh? Maybe.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. So, so for me, it was a lot of on my own, and it wasn't because no one was willing to help me. It's just because the soccer community is not dense with veterans or those who are familiar of making that type of step in transition. So a lot of navigating it was unfamiliar for me, and it was a little difficult. But I, with the assistance of those who have always supported me and have surrounded me, have helped kind of guide me there. I think that has made the transition a lot more smooth than what it could have been. Um, to go a little bit further in depth, I do think that there could be a different pathway, for that transition. But again, it's such a unique skill
Hmm.
set in terms of that job and how that translates into coaching that it's really difficult to make that
Right.
type of
Yeah.
transition. Yeah.
Many things they don't translate. They tend to not translate directly, right, in terms of verbiage and terminology and titles and positions, right. But what you cannot ignore is just or the experiences, right? Though now those translate directly, right? The leadership piece, the management piece, the team, the teamwork piece, the being a team player piece. What were the things beyond titles? What were the things that you felt were like instant, instantly uh, relevant? Instantly, maybe gave you a leg up as you started transitioning into the coaching world because of your experiences in the army.
Teamwork in high duress scenarios, and being able to have that leadership situation. Because in the military, we all know it's a team oriented trade. We don't have individuals. It's always going to be groups or battalions and brigades and units, but at any given time you're going to be managing a group of individuals. And I think having that early on experience plus having my time overseas in Iraq, there wasn't really anything that came up short as far as a leadership scenario, whether that's managing their physical fitness to ensure that all the soldiers are physically fit, making sure that they're having proper nutrition, making sure that their uniforms are intact, and making sure that they have accountability of everything that belongs to them, their equipment, so that way when we go out, we can be successful. And I think I can go even further in detail, but there are several components of leadership and teamwork from the military that directly translates into soccer. It's just the occupation in itself is the only thing that really makes the drastic difference.
Gotcha. So why coaching, right? You're in the middle, find yourself in the military, obviously, a couple of combat tours. What what led you to the game and what led you to coaching? Because so we all know, I don't think it was the money. So what why coaching?
Well, I mean, it's funny you say that because the root of it in some form is money. I come from a poor family,
Mm-hmm.
not very well educated in all its form, and so struggling a little bit financially and seeing sports as an avenue really really
Right.
was important for me, and being able to utilize that platform and be able to make the next step was really really important. And I didn't quite know how that was going to translate into the world. I wasn't good enough to be a professional athlete, and coaching wasn't really quite in the picture. So when I had joined the military, and I started picking up on things that I started was interested in was motivating young kids, motivating other people to do better, try to help them in terms of leadership and aspirations and goals and pathways, just to help them navigate. And I think that's where the military and coaching came together. because there are a lot of people who are like that in those circumstances in the military where the job itself provides you not only great benefits for your family, but it gives you disciplinary skills, leadership, and just a way of life should you not be afforded any other pathway. And with that, the leadership component and working and volunteering with the kids and helping them between both the military and soccer kind of bled together, I guess you could say. And
Mhm.
with that, I was able to discover, hey, I can coach and train young athletes and help guide them through the process and step the same way that I did for young soldiers going through their military career.
Right.
Just the only difference now is I wasn't able to have that mentor growing up to help guide me
Yeah.
to make it to that next level. Whereas is now I've had the blessing to take my leadership skills and help guide those youngsters from high school and show them the way versus what I was not afforded to at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely service oriented, no doubt.
Mhm.
Um, so, this one's very broad, but maybe some of our veterans that are listening, right, that currently aren't coaching or have been thinking about it, but just haven't gone through with it. Maybe some athletic directors, head coaches, maybe whether it's at the high school level or definitely at the college level, regardless of division, right? For all of them out there, or maybe it's even club directors. Why do more vets need to consider becoming coaches, soccer coaches, and why should more be hired as coaches, regardless of level?
Well, what I think the leadership component is the most important part. I think when you think about the military, everyone kind of looks at it as this mercenary group, or the only occupations are conflict, or they look at Top Gun, and while those things are all important in its own facet, I think the skill set that military leaders bring to the table is that one-on-one and group leadership. There's something to be said about going through training like everyone else, learning the ropes and being able to train the next generation to make that step. And for a lot of military members, especially those who continue their career on very, very far, you're exposed to that type of leadership at every single level, whether that's maintaining the books with S2 on equipment, or if that's maintaining your weapons for just your person and your team. It's no different. It's the same accountability as a coach, or the same thing as a team who has a captain. She needs, or he needs to make sure, or they need to make sure that everyone has their socks, everyone has the right ball, is everyone at training on time? And all of those scenarios are rooted within you as a military member from the second that you step foot off that bus at boot camp, or training camp, wherever it may be, until you're done. I mean, it's very much translatable as far as the
Right.
way we do things in the military and how it can structure into sports. I think there's a reason why you see oftentimes a lot of these elite organizations are going to the military with team building principles, with team building drills and advice, etc. Because there are a lot more
Mhm.
commonalities than what those
Yeah.
understand. I think looking at veterans, it should be definitely looked at for sure.
Right. Yeah. So we talked about coaching, why coaching, and it's one thing to say, "Hey, I want to become a coach. I want to coach soccer." It's another to dive into the performance, the analytics, right? The performance, the analysis piece, the trends piece. So how and why? How did that come about, and why
For me,
for you? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, my job downrange was to analyze and marshal the mission as much as possible. And a lot of that is being able to gather as much information as possible on whether that's an enemy combatant, or if it's a high value target that you're looking for, or if it's just a simple presence patrol. It's again, it's the same thing that
Right.
translates into soccer. And I think that's where the beauty of it and where my mind kind of operates. Those who know me, I my mind is all over the place and looking in extreme details.
I never met a coach whose mind wasn't though. You know, that's
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's very true.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I guess I asked the question though also because I that's how where we kind of crossed paths initially was became a big fan of your work going back to what you were starting to do at Florida, but definitely with Florida State, and and I had the opportunity, I had the privilege of going through back in think August of 2019, I went through the United Soccer Coaches their inaugural their performance analysis
Mhm.
course. Right, it was a two and a half day in residence course that they had there at uh, at their campus there in Union Station in Kansas City, and it was phenomenal. It was to be in that room with coaches at all kinds of different levels as well. The minds that were in there, the discussions were pretty awesome. Right, they were incredible, and
Mhm.
and I took a lot from that. And then when I came across you and the work that you were doing, I could definitely relate to it. And analysis and trends. I'm a big trends guy, right? I try to, pick up on these things. Um, when you look at it from that perspective and what you've learned, right? Where do you see the game at the college level? Where do you see it going, and maybe in your own little crystal ball, right? Your maybe the next 3 to 5 years, that analysis, that performance analysis piece, where do you maybe see it going in the college game in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's a good question, Hector.
Yeah.
In the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be mandatory. It's going to be a very, very important component for programs because with more data being accessible, players becoming exceptionally better, coaches becoming more knowledgeable, and with the information more readily available, you have to find your extra edge. And that extra edge comes from analyzing the material that's provided to you. And if you're not, you're going to fall behind. And I think you can see that. There's a relative amount of programs around the country that are doing this formally, informally, just because of the compliance rules and financial structure on how that goes. But I foresee in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see more programs at a higher rate looking for these roles for them, and it's going to be something where it's more frequent because we're behind the curve. If I'm being
Mhm.
completely honest, as far as a nation, in terms of just the role itself and the familiarity and how it's being implemented into programs, but particularly on the women's side, for me, the data is so the sample size is so small, and now you're
Mhm.
having more companies that are becoming invested, especially with the likes of companies with Sports Code and Huddle and Instat integrating and things becoming again more available. Programs are going to find this a necessity, and not only
Right.
that, players are going to want to get better, and
Yeah.
a lot of that's going to come down to analyzing the material.
Yeah. Excuse me. A while back, we had, I want to say maybe about 10, 12 episodes back, we had a couple of representatives from both from VO as well as Beyond Pulse, and leading up to the Tasco convention. And one of the trends that they identified were that in the coming years, where it's going is college coaches, when they're looking at prospective student athletes coming out of high school into their programs, as it becomes more and more available, that bio data is going to be requested to accompany the film, right? So film one day will not be enough anymore, right?
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's a good topic to for everyone to kind of probe into because as you look overseas, you have transfer markets. I mean, even in the
Mhm.
U.S., you see everything as far as recruits getting posted.
Right.
Four-star recruit gets signed, five-star recruit gets signed, and you want to be able to look at these metrics because you want to see is that player going to be able to perform, particularly not only within your program but within the conference, and uniquely conferences play different stylistically. Pac-12 is going to play different than the SEC, than the ACC, Big Ten, SWAC, etc. And being able to understand these metrics is important. For us in the SEC, we know it's an extremely athletic and relatively aerial game, and so looking for a player that can match not only the technical ability but the athleticism markered with the physicality, that's a great pick. And if you're able to narrow that down early on, then it allows you to narrow your selection pool with recruits, prospective athletes, and most importantly, what's going to be huge for college coaches and even at every level is going to be the transfer portal and being able to look
Yeah.
at that again. It's again, it's
Yeah.
the game is becoming more unique. It's becoming more refined and detailed, and with
Hmm.
that, I think you need to have more collective minds looking at everything.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, very well said. Um, so whether it's the coach who is zero tech savvy out there, right? It's not a, old coach thing. It's like we have young coaches that are not necessarily very tech savvy, right? So whether it's the coach that's not very tech savvy or they're strictly X's and O's oriented, maybe, and they're kind of wondering, or the parent, or even the current high school student athlete that's out there, they hear us talking about analysis, data, metrics, trends. When we talk about the data, give us a little bit of insight specifically, because there may those all those people may be wondering, okay, he keeps talking about this information, he keeps mentioning data, but what exactly is he referring to when he says data? Tell us a couple of things that you're talking about.
So simple one that everyone is very familiar with is XG. It's expected goals. So with that,
Hmm.
it's being able to project the possibility, the rate of success in which that said individual is going to be able to score, or the possibility. That's one of them. I don't particularly use that one too often for other reasons beyond that. But for instance, if you look in most
You mean this
recent,
guy right here? You
yeah,
mean this
yeah,
guy right here?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sitting on my
yeah.
desk over here. Yeah, yeah.
Well, and it's great that you asked that question because with the data that's provided, you not only do you have to look at it and you want to understand what it is, you have to understand what's applicable for you at your level and what your
Correct.
program is doing. Right?
Correct.
You're not going to have
Correct.
a U6 or U8s looking at XG components and understanding how many
Mhm.
penetrating passes they make, etc. And so, before I carry on, I think that's the most important part is understanding what's most applicable and fitting to you and your program.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, once you've been able to identify it, that's when
Mhm.
you start being able to narrow down the data that you're looking at. And
So
that's go ahead.
no, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
And I think that's where again it piggybacks off of understanding the philosophy of the program and the coaches and what
Yeah.
they want,
Yeah.
and then also understanding the expectations, the parameters within your content and what you not only raise the level of performance, but the possibility of winning, right? So
Right.
for us, it's okay. How many players can we get into the wide boxes of the 18s and then play cutback because that factor of scoring goals has raised over the years, and it's been a common trend within the World Cup, and everyone's talking about it. So again, it's like, what can you look at that's applicable to your program and the style that you play, um, and at that point, you're able to not only refine your data, but you're able to explore it a lot more as well.
Mhm. Yeah. So I guess though, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying I should hold off on implementing this with my U5s, right? I guess is that what you're saying, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No. But tongue in cheek, obviously. But so you mentioned XG. What are some other things that you can expand on?
Oh, most so shots on goal. So shots on goal is a very
Mhm.
controversial one.
Yeah.
Is it something that really explains the performance? I think a lot of people again, it's open for interpretation. A team that outshoots someone else, there's no real correlation between that being successful or unsuccessful, because if a team outshoots the other one 20-6, but then if they
Hmm.
score a goal, they might taper off that shooting. So then again, how does that translate? So that's one.
Mm.
Another one is penetrating passes, breaking lines. So again, everyone
Yeah.
defines it differently. I define it as an early vertical ball, so it's just simple for the players to understand when the ball
Right.
is played forward, how many lines of confrontation, or players, not lines
Hmm.
of confrontation,
Hmm.
but players are we breaking with that pass to be able to advance that ball forward? Again, it really does depend on how you're looking at it, because another opponent might not build out the back. They might want to clip the ball in. So again, it's now I want to look at, okay, if I'm playing against a team that's always playing the ball out the back, out of the air from the goalkeeper, in the 50-50 confrontations, where are they doing it the most? How successful
Mhm.
are they? And then that's where the biometrics come in. Okay, are we mismatching? Do we have someone who's 5'2" on a DiFilippo who might be 5'10"? It's a mismatch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
about understanding the data and respecting your opponent. But that's where it becomes exploratory again.
Yeah. Harder stat line to discern. What is the maybe the more consistent or inconsistent stat line? You talked about one shots on goal versus maybe the hot one right now, especially coming out of this men's World Cup, possession percentage. What do you think?
Yeah.
I know
So
it's loaded. I know that's a loaded one, but yeah, have at it.
yeah. So I think this is a good one, particularly because coming from various programs at Florida, at the University of Florida with Becky Burley and Allen and Vic, it was a very possession based oriented team. Even with that system being an SEC, you knew if you were playing against them that there's going to be a cluster of passes, especially flat across. Versus when you go into other teams part into the SEC, you might get a one side team that's more defensive, so they might not attack as forward as possible. So that's where I think possession is a little bit different because you kind of have to see who's playing direct, who's playing indirect, and do they value possession or are they a team that can't? That's the other thing as well is do you have the component to do that and achieve it? So I think it's a good statistic to look at if you just want to simply see who's maintaining possession of the ball, but having a clear understanding to say, well, if said team maintains it for 66%, then they're going to win. That's not always the case. So I think
Right.
I think that's a tough one. I think for ones
Mhm.
that are a little bit more, what's the word I can say, more refined and concrete for me, that's important is 50-50 in second balls. How important are you taking first contact? And then do you have
Mhm.
players that are set in good positions to win the secondary ball? I think
Yeah.
that's one where it's not as controversial. But again,
Right.
it's all dependent on the program philosophy.
Correct. So I guess, and this is one maybe that we can expand on more later because we can clear. I think you and I can clearly nerd out on this subject,
Hmm.
but at what point, like maybe when you start to identify, you look at analysis of a tech report, really, analysis, post match analysis. How how many different external factors, variables, or what are the key ones to keep it? Whether they be, you know, the extenuating circumstances, the variables of whether they be uh, time of day of the match, weather, right, inclement weather. Um, were both teams quote unquote at 100% in terms of injury free, right? There's because you can add you can what if it all day, obviously. So I think that becomes the other piece, right? Is if I'm going to identify my key variables to be able to decipher this information, what would apply? I think that's kind of where I'm at right now in terms of when I start looking at data from matches. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you have to look at it in three different components. I think you have to look at it in-game strategy, player development, and sports science. With sports science, with the data, again, it's as depth as you want it to go, and it's all surrounding on the detail of the staff and the program of what they want to look at. For example, in sports science, do you want to look at load management and then be able to manage their substitution blocks? For in-game strategies, you would have done a scouting report prior. So are you entering the wide box areas on the left flank, consistently by the halftime like you wanted to? And then as far as player development, that's where again you're going to look at the development side of the player and look at the data that's pertinent to them. For defender, you're looking at 50-50 and lost ball recovery, for instance. So I think again, it's really difficult to narrow down the topics. I think the
Yeah,
importance
yeah,
of it is to look at in those three structures: in-game
right.
strategy, sports science, and player development, and then from
Hmm.
there identify what you deem is going to be important to you. But in terms of what specifically you want for a game, I think your important factors are can you establish how many goals you want to score a game to on average? So
Mm-hmm.
3 goal minimum, hey, that's the standard. Whether you achieve it or not, you allow that to be the standard. For defending,
Right.
you want to sustain 75% of your 50-50 first touch, and then
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be. So I think that as long as it matches your game model, and it could change from week to week, I recommend not varying it at that level, just so you can keep some consistency and simplicity
Yeah.
with players. But again,
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
dependent on the staff, but then allow your performance analysts to dive a little bit deeper into other things that might pique their
Mm-hmm.
curiosity.
Yeah. And there's, and obviously there's two key pieces. It's kind of bookended, I guess, right, in terms of transitional phases here, because you have the data that is maybe that you're looking to implement into a game plan and maybe in-game adjustment versus the data that you extrapolate post-match, right? That you
Mhm.
then have to interpret and then to going forward, maybe for the next, whether it's the next match or the next training session. Um, so there's I guess, two different components going on there.
Yeah, that's very true. So if you block it, you know, technically, if you do a what I would deem to be a periodization model in terms of identifying what you want to work on and how you're building that out, that should be based on the scouting report. You know, if you're playing a team who's playing a low block, you're going to work all week long on that. And so that's why I say the parameters might change, because you're not going to play a lot of transitional game if you have a team who's sitting on the top of the 18 the entire time. It's not, it's that's a territorial game. So understanding that metric, that's where possession might become a value. If you can sustain possession
Mhm.
of the ball and you're at the top of the 18 on a low block, then your chances of winning are going to be high. But then again, it's looking at the shots. Are you taking quality shots, not just peppering them all over the field? So
Right.
it does become difficult, but I think it only becomes as difficult as you make it. If you want your metrics and
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
stay the same, they can stay the same.
Hmm.
Not
Yeah.
everyone's
That's a great. Yeah. It's a great point. Yeah. On back in our previous episode with Dave Simeone, he's the director of education programs for United Soccer Coaches. Excuse me. He talked about, especially coming out of the this most recent World Cup, how the dynamic is changing in terms of particularly the relationship and what they're finding with these post match tech reports, but the relationship that's changing between the head coach and the analyst, right? How are you seeing that develop? Maybe whether it's at the pro level, into the college level, power fives, what have you, or are you seeing that develop, like you personally?
Yeah, so it's a hybrid rule. I think I'm one who's been able to benefit from it directly, and I've been blessed to be surrounded by those who supported me in that role and believe in my craft. And over the years, it's been just one dimensional. You know, it's just the
Mm-hmm.
analyst. It's not a hybrid role. So if you take the example of us, like in the military, for for better lack of purposes, you're a war fighter first, but then you have your MOS, which is your secondary skill. So if you're a dentist, not
Right.
a dentist, or you're a mechanic, whatever it may be, and it's the same here now. But I think now what you're starting to see is you're having analysts who were primarily just an analyst role, who are now kind of rolling into this hybrid role
Mm-hmm.
of coach. They're the ones who are watching a lot of the material in tandem with the
Right.
coaching staff. So why restrict that additional voice and that additional person to go out there? Now, again, that all has to be program oriented. You might not want to have too many voices talking. You want to limit that. But again, an analyst has been becoming more and more and more relevant, especially in a hybrid role. And I think you're seeing that grow and grow and grow, not only because it's important, but if we're being completely honest, you're going to pay a coach who can do both, or you're going to pay two individuals to do separate job. You know, again, it
Right.
depends on
Right.
what level you're wanting to do that. I'm not a data scientist engineer. I'm not that intelligent. I can't do that stuff. You have to have someone who can do those things, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
where it's a little different. So,
Yeah. Oh, you don't stop being humble. You don't have to be humble on
yeah.
here. But yeah, you talked. That was a perfect analogy there in terms of the military and the war fighter, and then just the primary job versus all the other things that you do maybe day to day. Yeah, I immediately that brought to mind going back to my active duty days of, if you recall, I'm sure you've seen the movie 300, and
Yeah.
with King Leonidas when they're at the top of the hill, right, and he asks
Mhm.
the Spartans, "What is your profession?" Right,
Yeah.
love that scene, absolutely love that scene. But
Yeah.
now, as we start to transition out of this, I got one last question for you on the performance analytics side.
Mhm.
How What do you think? We talked about 3 to 5 years in the college game. You mentioned pretty much see it being mandatory. But what about the ripple effect, the impact on maybe the club and the high school game?
Oh, it's I mean it's huge. It's huge. You have companies now like VO that's essentially an all-in-one package, right? That has data analysis and all these things. So players and coaches and parents and everyone is now, again, like I said, is becoming more accessible. The data is becoming more accessible to all the families and to the coaches. And for them, it's a great opportunity not only for the individual player to mark those types of development and have a tangible benchmark as far as a report that lets you know if you're improving, but the club is able to also analyze it. And then most importantly, now they're able to clip the film and they're able to remove the third man from the equation and be able to produce that type of film that's efficient and effective for coaches at the next level. So as far as a recruiting tool, it's huge, especially with the NWSL having more availability. USL 2 is going to be opening up as far as for more teams with the men's, and then with the women's side that's opening up as well. A lot of this information, as far as film and data and performance analysis from every level, is going to become a huge recruiting tool, and it was even with the COVID. So
Yeah, yeah, awesome. So one of the things that we didn't really get into earlier, but you spent a little bit of time as a high school coach as well, in addition to on the club side. I know you're currently actively involved in the club game as well, but how did becoming a high school coach help prep you to be in your role now as a college coach?
to be completely honest, Hector, there's a lot. I mean, the similarities, the biggest difference that I noticed, the big component that's both the same and different is the financial component definitely impacts the program, right? So
Hmm.
college is essentially like high school for me in a lot of facets. When I was a high school coach, because I did both boys and girls in Wisconsin, and the seasons are separate, so it's back to back. So it was nice. I was able to
Yeah.
do it year round, and what you're doing between college and high school, with the exception of recruiting, is you're managing players academically, socially, athletically. You're having to manage them as human beings and interacting with peers and with the parents. And then you're also having to interact with parents and giving progress reports on how their performance is. I mean, I've had to sit in on multiple meetings with athletic directors, with all the local coaches for votes. I'm sure you've gone through the same thing. I know Texas has, because we were here with my high school team back in, I believe it was in 2000, I believe 17 or 18. We had the MPS tournament. We played against Nolan
Yeah.
Catholic and a couple other teams. I mean, it's the same. So you're traveling. If you want to play against the better teams, you got to travel, and a lot of that stuff translates to the collegiate level. It's just the biggest difference is at the college level, you have 24 players that all live and breathe and play soccer, whereas high school, you're getting more of a mixed batch. But as far as
Yeah.
the financial and the team and parents and a lot of that stuff, it has helped me tremendously to be able to get that experience. Because without you being in that coaching position, you don't get that experience at the collegiate level. And so
Right.
that's where I think
Yeah.
the high school has really, really helped me make that step.
Awesome. Yeah. It's good to hear. The you've been here going on a year in Texas now, in your time at A&M. What are your thoughts? Just kind of curious. What are your thoughts on? No idea how much you've been able to attend or watch whatsoever, but between what you see, what you hear, social media, what have you, the vibe. What are your thoughts on the Texas high school soccer scene?
Oh, I mean, Texas soccer is it's a different animal. I mean, Texas athletes, as far as a it's like a nation, in my opinion. um, but I mean, they're tremendous athletes. I mean, these players nowadays are they're so much more athletic than I was. I mean, they're so much more talented. They're so much more disciplined and just gifted. But particularly in Texas, being able to just see the vast majority, because coming from Florida, if soccer, especially in Melbourne, a lot of people played soccer. I mean, we've had great talents, the likes of Ashland Harris, Tony Presley, just to name just a few who have stepped out of that element. That even now you're seeing more of those types of players. So now you look across Texas. There's these kids, like I said, are getting better and better, and with social media and the videos becoming more available, again, that's where you're able to see a lot of this, and I mean, it's been quite impressive for Texas. So I mean, I kudos to the state of Texas for what you all do.
For what you're helping do. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? So from Florida to Florida State to now at A&M, whether it was Becky Burley, Mark Krikorian, and a national title in 2021 while you were there. Congratulations on that again.
Thank you.
Hoping you're wearing the rock, hoping you were wearing the ring so you could show it off today, but I know you're not going to. And then now, right, with Coach G there at Texas A&M, what has that been like working with and serving all of those coaches and the commonalities within the programs? What's your takeaway when you step back and look at that?
That's a really good question. The biggest one for me is the leadership educator component. If you look at all the staff, all three of those staff, they have, if not all of them, or someone on that staff who's an educator. And I think that's an important component. Being able to articulate your thoughts in a very clear and concise way to touch and motivate and influence everyone is extremely important. And with that came with communication. I mean, Mark, Mike, Ema, Becky, Vic, Alan, G, Phil, Lori, Alyssa, all of them. I mean, everyone I've worked with in those programs have all been extremely good communicators in some way, in their own accord, right? Because everyone
Yeah.
communicates in different ways, but the one common thing that I always felt was important for all of them was communication. Because even with the data analysis, right? So a stressor at Florida and Florida State, even now here at A&M, was, are we getting the information to the players and is it benefiting them? How are we getting that information to them, and are we being clear? Are we one voice, one mind, and being unified when we have these discussions? So
Yeah.
so I would say communication, as far as the leadership aspect goes, that's the biggest component and commonality I see in these programs.
Yeah. So we talked about part of that national championship squad in Florida State in 2021. Then you come over to Texas A&M. In your time that you've been here at Texas A&M, what has maybe been the biggest, I don't know whether we want to call it eye opener, surprise, or maybe just something that you weren't expecting prior to your arrival here well, not here, but in A&M here in Texas?
What was the biggest surprise? Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know that I can think of anything right after.
No pressure.
I think in not a biased way of looking at it, I think the biggest shock for me is having been in the SEC and then going to the ACC and then back into the SEC. You still have your core collect teams that are always going to be exceptionally well, but as far as the performance goes and how competitive these teams are, everybody wants it. I mean, it's no different. It's no different. I think people are confused sometimes when teams are underperforming or overperforming, that maybe this program doesn't really want it, or they're happy with the way that they're doing things. It's like, no, every single one of these programs wants to win. I mean, all the players are like that. I can't say that for the rest of the country. I'm not saying that it's not that way for them. But from my experience and what I've seen, as far as a shock was the fact that everyone is very much like that. I didn't think everyone had that level of drive in them. I sometimes think that it takes a very special person to have that type of level of obsession, I guess you could say, for better lack of words.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was it was a surprise, but no surprise at the same time.
Yeah, awesome. So he is Coach Ahmad Brown, the assistant women's soccer coach and performance analyst at Texas A&M University. Coach, let's talk a little bit about the convention, the upcoming convention. I understand you'll be in attendance, correct?
That's correct. I will be there.
Yeah, United Soccer Coaches Convention, which is taking place this coming week, January 11th through the 15th in Philadelphia. What do you have planned? And maybe what are some of the things that you have on your list, like the must-tos? Like, I got to watch this, I got to hear this. What are you most looking forward to?
Oh, that's a big list. There's a lot of things. But I think part two.
You give us maybe one or two.
Yeah, I think what it is I more so want to listen to people. I don't technically always look for the topic so much as I want to listen to people. So like Elith, that's at UVA, she's a performance analyst and has worked within the nation and with UVA for quite some time. I really respect her work, and so being able to go there and just listen and hopefully steal ideas from her is always great. And then obviously the other one is the emotional, social / player development side, and that's with the What Drives Winning and just those discussions with Becky Burley and that group, and Mark Kokoring will be in that group as well. I think that's going to be another one that's just as make those networks and those connections and speak to and learn from those individuals.
Yeah. Awesome. So will you be there? Are you there start to finish, or what's
Yes.
that looking like for you?
Yes, I will be there on the 10th through the 15th.
Gotcha.
So I'll be there a day
Awesome.
early. I'll be there for the whole entire event.
Definitely looking forward to it. Hey, feel free to tag us on any cool stuff that you come across. We'd love to be able to check that out. So awesome. So, all right, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're going to bring back Coach Brown with our counterattack segment, where we get to pick on him a little bit, have some fun with him, not at his expense, with him. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
College Promoters USA, founded and located in San Antonio, operates as the only family-owned college recruiting company in Texas that brings a truly professional, local, and face-to-face approach to area high school student athletes and their families. As the lead sponsor and proud supporter of the 50/50 podcast, alongside Coach Hector Cano, College Promoters is proud to be elevating its support for the college soccer recruiting process more than any other service in the country. If your son or daughter is serious about competing in college soccer, call College Promoters USA directly at 210-494-6363 or visit collegepromotersusa.com anytime. College Promoters USA, the best investment a parent can make in their high school student athlete.
And we're back with Coach Ahmad Brown, assistant women's soccer coach and performance analyst at Texas A&M University. Coach, it's about that time, a little bit of counterattack. But before we get to pick on you, I want to talk really quick about our good friends at Gipper. So Gipper is the way schools, athletic departments, ADs, and coaches create world-class marketing content. Join 2,500 coaches and ADs and use Gipper to create high-quality visual branded graphics for your program. The best part, anyone can do it in seconds on any device without needing any design experience whatsoever. We've personally, the 50/50 podcast, we've been proud partners with them now for going on 6 months, have absolutely loved it. World-class customer service as well. So now you can be rewarded as a listener of the 50/50 podcast. If you want to get a first-time Gipper purchase, that's an annual package. You can save 10% off any Gipper, any package whatsoever. First-time package, 10% off for 50/50 podcast listeners. Just go to Gipper.com/partner/5050. Again, that's Gipper.com/partner/5050. All right, Coach, you ready?
Ready?
Yeah, I don't know. You look a little nervous to me. I don't know. Let's see.
I was ready.
All right. Point of no return. All right, here we go. First thing right out of the gate. Strangest thing in your refrigerator.
Ooh. I don't know. Dill pickles? I don't really like pickles.
That's the strangest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, dill pickles. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I did actually ask this question. To Coach G when we had him on. He said, I can't remember, it was dog. I think it was dog food or cat food. I want to say dog food is what he said. So yeah, I think that's I think that's been my favorite one so far. So
Dog food or cat food?
all right. Yeah, I think it was dog food that he said.
Dog
so yeah.
food.
So
Yeah.
all right. Last song you downloaded.
Last song I downloaded. I just did this one. Tic Tac Toe by Meek Mill.
Okay. All right. So game day superstitions, or as a coach, not as a player, game day superstitions or rituals.
Oh, film. Like, I have to watch at least. I mean, I watch at least 6 games minimum of the opponent. I can't go into a match without watching, like feeling thorough.
Yeah. All right. Good. Good. I like that one. So now what happens if you don't get in the 6?
Well, that's the thing. Usually like 6 is like the threshold. That's about like
Oh, I
as
get
high
you.
as I go. But usually it's about 2 or 3, realistically.
Gotcha. Okay. So, all right. So book you recommend to coaches and or athletes. Could be 2 different books. Could be the same one.
11
Book you would
Rings by
recommend
Phil
to.
Jackson.
Say it again.
Oh, I have 2. So I would say 11 Rings by Phil Jackson, and then Simon Sinek.
Mhm.
I believe it's Know Your Why, or Start With Your Why.
Start with why. Yeah.
Start with why.
I got that one over here too. So
Yeah, that one was recommended to me by Vic Campbell. He kept pushing it on to me. So
yeah. Have you read his book? So Leaders Eat Last. Have you read his Leaders Eat Last yet?
so I just
For
purchased it on Amazon actually for like
Simon
my
Sinek?
books for this year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely. That one you'll pick up on a lot of the similarities and the applicational piece, what you saw in your military career from that one really quick. So yeah. Had the opportunity to actually hear him speak. He spoke at my military training instructor graduation course. He spoke to us. So
It's awesome.
Was pretty cool. He's done a lot of work with the military. So all right, next one. Favorite and least favorite soccer team.
Ooh, favorite soccer team is Borussia Dortmund, and my least favorite soccer team is Portland Timbers.
Oh, okay.
They have the
What's the
worst.
story behind that one?
They're gonna hate me for this. I'm gonna get ridiculed on Twitter by someone, but Portland Timber fans are the worst.
Yeah. It's strictly because of the fans. That's why. No other real reason. Just
No, that's
yeah.
it.
All right. Well, I'm with you on the Dortmund one at least. Yeah. So big fan of their work. So big fan of the Bundesliga. I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. One thing so Ahmad Brown is appointed the soccer czar in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are in charge of all of soccer in America. All right. What is the very first thing, agenda item number 1 that you would change soccer in this country tomorrow?
Finance. Make it more available to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it at a flat rate. I know that's impossible, but in a perfect world, that's how I'd have it.
Right. Yeah. And, and that answer comes up regularly, but it's like, hey, what are we going to do about it? How did we get here? And what are we going to do about it? Right. So, all right. So sponsorship seems to be one of them, but there's a lot of fees involved. So who knows? All right. So 2-parter here for you. Greatest and worst sports movie.
Greatest and worst sports movie. The greatest movie, which is a documentary for me, is called The Street Stops Here. It follows a basketball team at St. Anthony's, coached by Bob Hurley, whose son was Bobby Hurley at Duke. That's a great one. Okay. And then the least, Remember the Titans is, no, I don't know about that
one. Really?
Yeah, okay. I think the reason for me because I've seen it so many times. I don't think it's the worst one. It's just one I can't watch anymore.
Oh, okay. I got you.
I've watched too many times. I can't say Friday Night Lights because all of Texas will find me. So
yeah. That's actually part of mine, to be honest with you. Mine is the 2-parter. Yeah, mine is my quote unquote I have to pick really between 3, so I narrow it down to 2. But it's like my top 3, if you will, are Miracle, Hoosiers, and Friday Night Lights, right?
Okay.
So, but but I think if I have a hard time splitting between Miracle and Friday Night Lights, so love Miracle. So, so okay. Something you wish you were better at.
Always communication. Could always improve communication with everyone, from staff to the facility keeper to the students. Communication always.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. If not a coach, you would have been what?
Garbage man. Oh, I've always wanted to be a garbage man. I like hanging off. I like because when I was younger and you'd see them hanging off the back of the truck
Yeah.
going around the city. They can't do that
Yeah.
anymore because there's too many lawsuits. But
Yeah.
that's what I would do.
Yeah, man. They're being phased out now. They're all
I know. I know.
Yeah.
I know. What are we
All
gonna
right.
do?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Okay. All right. That might be our best one yet. I like that one. So, all right. Most recent binge watch, series, episodes, whatever, volume of movies, what have you. What's been the most recent binge watch for you? Netflix?
Chef's Table on Netflix. I love food, and in fact, there's some woman just outside of Austin who was on Chef's Table. But anything with food and cooking, I binge watch. They have all
Chef's
those. Yeah,
Chef's Table? Yeah. I
yep.
haven't come across that one.
Yeah, you have to check it out. The barbecue spot is here in Texas, and she's
Yeah.
noted. The barbecue place is noted as one of the greatest in the country. Yeah, it's incredible.
Table, you said, right? Chef's Table?
Chef's Table.
Okay.
Well, there's multiple part series, but she's in the Chef's Table barbecue.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I haven't come across. I'll ask my wife. I don't know. My wife likes to watch a lot more of that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
all right. Next one. Next one. Yeah, she's gonna love me saying that, right?
Yeah.
Next one. Yeah, she's not listening anyway. Beach, the beach, hiking, or skiing. Which one?
Ooh, the beach. I'm a Florida kid growing up in Melbourne. I was always out
Yeah.
surfing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Awesome. So, yeah. And speaking of Melbourne, I'll have to share with you offline one of the best players I ever coached. And it happened to be when I was at the Air Force Academy. She was from Melbourne, Florida. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. She's a
Nice.
phenomenal young lady. And I think she's still active duty, probably at least a captain, if not a major by now. So,
Oh, that's
all
incredible.
right. So next one. So you're going to love this one. So
Okay.
if you could do it over again, if you could go back, would you? And if you would, which one? Different branch of military that you would have gone into, and why is it the Air Force?
Yeah, it would be the Air Force. My father served 24
See,
years.
I knew.
Yeah, my father served 24 years. He did Air Command Staff College down in Melbourne,
Yeah.
and was an educator for the academy there. I think I would go to the Air Force. I wanted to fly, but I'm color deficient, so it's not very clear. You can't really see colors up in the sky, so that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that mixes very well.
Yeah. It's an interesting one too, because I don't know if you've ever seen this, the Football Life, that series. Are you familiar with that series, A Football Life?
No, I don't recall hearing that.
From NFL Network. I have to just send you the clip on it. So I know you've heard of Roger Staubach, right? Legendary
Yes. Yep.
quarterback, for the
Mhm.
Cowboys. So before he entered Navy, the Naval Academy, he was color deficient, right? Quote unquote color blind.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
they kind of accidentally passed him, right? Passed him on his test. So it's an interesting story. I always think of that story when I think in terms of the military and the color deficiency.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, last one. I've been asking this one to coaches lately. I love this one. And truth be told, I kind of stumbled across this question randomly in one of my own training sessions. And I was like, I think I'm going to ask this one. How would all that you've done now and all you've learned now, and you could go back and coach you, the player, back in your playing days, right, as a younger kid, how would you have coached you?
I think the same way that I coach all the players now is just have an exceptionally high standard, but be understanding and patient, and know that it's a scaffolding system, right? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Just be patient with myself and as I am with others, because it didn't start off that way. I think that's something you acquire over time. But yeah, that's definitely what it would be.
Yeah. Smooth is fast. I drop that in my training sessions regularly. Trust me.
It works. It works.
Yeah. No, I agree. I heard that for many years, going back to my active duty days. Yeah. So I'm a believer. So, Coach, this has been exceptional. This has been great. Have loved having you on. I know we could have like I said, we could have nerded out and talked about just the analytics piece for an hour by itself. So, but I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your time spending a Saturday with us here. But before we go, as is customary, we'd like to wrap up with our final thoughts. And since you are our guest, the floor is yours. We want to let you go first. So whether it's any thoughts regarding the game, shout outs, thank yous, whatever final thought it is that you may be, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, Hector, I just want to say thank you for having me on the podcast. I think what you're doing is great. As I said before, this wasn't a platform that was easily accessible for someone like me when I started. So I encourage everyone to listen to the 50/50 podcast. And if you can, just continue to listen and hear the different perspectives and views of others, because the amount of information that you can get from just simply listening is tremendous. And I think like I said, what you're doing here is great. And I appreciate you bringing me onto the show and being able to share some of my experiences with others.
Yeah. Thank you, Coach. I sincerely appreciate that coming from you. Thank you again for all you're doing. Wish you and the squad the absolute best. Coach G, give Coach G a shout out for me as well.
Yeah.
And your team, the squad, the staff, I should say, there. Wish you guys a great 2023 and both in the spring and then next fall as well. So thank you for being here. And our final thoughts are pretty simple. It's obviously the early season, the UIL early season Texas high school soccer tournament period is here over the next really 2 weekends, starting with this weekend. So have been seeing a lot of stuff coming across social media. Congratulations to everybody who's out there that's competing, especially to those teams that they kind of, they're putting themselves out there in terms of being a little bit vulnerable. They're not trying to make it through this weekend or the first 2 weekends undefeated. They're trying to test themselves, challenge themselves, and put in the work in January, hoping that it can pay off through district play and especially in late March and early April as we start working towards Georgetown for the state tournament. So congratulations to everybody out there who's been out there competing through this first weekend. I will be on my way out shortly as well to cover a couple of matches. So looking forward to that. So thank you for all you're doing. And again, you can find us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at 50_50pod, as well as on Instagram at 50_50 podcast. Go to YouTube as well. Please subscribe, hit the notification so you can get notified whenever we have an upcoming episode. We will be back on Monday with, in case you didn't already see that, with Tom Byer. So the founder of Soccer or Football Starts at Home, as well as legendary international trainer and consultant, as well as done a lot of work with the Japanese Football Association as well. So big fan of his work. Has done a lot of work with the Houston Dynamo as well. So we'll be back on Monday. Please be sure to check that out because I'm really looking forward to that one as well, because that's going to be a different one. So I'm really looking forward to being able to pick his brand a little bit. So that's going to do it again for Coach Brown, the assistant women's soccer coach and performance analyst at Texas A&M. And thank you again for everything. And you guys know what to do. Until the next time, keep downloading and keep listening. You've been listening to the 50/50 podcast, powered by College Promoters USA. Help us continue to grow by liking, rating, and subscribing on all major podcast platforms. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at 50_50pod, on Instagram at 50_50 podcast, as well as on YouTube at the 50_50 podcast. Until the next time, keep downloading and keep listening.